بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وأفضل الصلاة وأتم التسليم على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. I start with the name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the unconditionally loving, the unconditionally compassionate. And may the best of peace and blessings be upon final Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Prophet Muhammad, who was sent as a mercy to all mankind. And may the best of peace and blessings be upon all other prophets as well. Dear beloved brothers and sisters, I greet you with the great things of Islam, the great things of peace. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Today we have a story about a young man, or maybe in our time we call him a boy, who was living in the house of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. We are supposed to have a sahabiyya, a woman who lived with Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, but unfortunately the sources that I go back to, I don't have stories of women that are sufficient for the whole episode. I got abundant of stories, but they are short. I don't have enough information for the whole episode. So I will continue with men, inshallah, until I find some stories that can fit one episode. I will bring it in, inshallah. So today we'll speak about a young man, or unfortunately we call them boys nowadays, who was living in the house of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He is Sayyidina Osama Bin Zayd radiallahu anhu. If you remember last episode, we spoke about Zayd bin Haritha. He is his father. Osama bin Zayd radiallahu anhu was living in the house of Rasulullah because both parents were there. If you watch the previous episode of Sayyidina Zayd bin Haritha, you knew that Sayyidina Zayd was living in the house of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And the mother of Osama is Barakah Ayman radiallahu anha. Barakah Ayman was a bondswoman of the father of Rasulullah. She belonged to the father of Rasulullah. When his father passed away, she remained with his mother, and when Rasulullah was born, so there were three of them living in one house. She was the bondswoman, the slave. And when Rasulullah, his mother, the mother of Rasulullah, passed away, when Rasulullah was 6, on the way back from Medina to Mecca, there were three of them. Rasulullah buried his mother, and Barakah Ayman continued to live with Rasulullah and to take care of him. She is older than Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So Rasulullah used to call her my mother after my mother, so his second mother, radiallahu anha. Though she was of African origin and African look, that the skin is dark, the face looks like, African face, but Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam called her a mother. There is no racism in Islam. Rasulullah freed her. She was a bondswoman to his father. Rasulullah freed her, and she got married to one of the Muslims, and she delivered Ayman. So she is Ayman, but her husband passed away. And Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, "Man sarrahu an yatazawwaj imra'atan min ahli al-jannah falyatazawwaj Ayman." Who is pleased to marry a woman of the women of Jannah, let him marry Ayman. Sayyidina Zayd radiallahu anhu was happy for that, and he was willing to get married to her, though the age difference was big between them. But to Sayyidina Zayd, it was not age that is the main factor to choose a wife. Rasulullah said, a woman from the women of Jannah. So who refuses that? This is number one. And the dark skin, the appearance is not also important to Zayd radiallahu anhu, Sayyidina Zayd, as much as he was looking for a woman from the women of paradise. This is one issue. The other issue is that the house that he was living in, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, with his wife, our mother, Sayyidah Khadija radiallahu anha. So Sayyidah Khadija was 15 years older than Rasulullah. So that is normal for that house, as long as we got, a good wife, a wife of Jannah. So Sayyidina Zayd married her, and they got Osama Bin Zayd radiallahu anhu, our hero for the episode today. Osama Bin Zayd came similar to his mother. He was, of African look, a dark skin, and the face, the nose is African look. But Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam also taught us from the beginning with Ayman radiallahu anha, there is no racism in Islam. That's why Sayyidina Osama said radiallahu anhu, كان النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم يأخذه والحسين ويقول اللهم إني أحبهما فأحبهما. Rasulullah صلى الله عليه وسلم used to take him and Al-Hussein, the child of Rasulullah, the son of Sayyidah Fatima radiallahu anha. So take them both, and Rasulullah says, Allahumma, oh Allah, I love them both, so you love them. So in Islam, there is no room for racism based on color difference. What can make who says black is better than white or white is better than black? It depends on Iman. Illa bit-taqwa, except with the taqwa of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Since he was young, Sayyidina Osama radiallahu anhu showed, qualities of bravery, qualities of wisdom, of Iman. What do you expect of a boy or a young man? I like to call him young man because this is the reality, but we call them boys now, unfortunately, and that is one of the reasons that contributes for our children to be, irresponsible or less responsible, to use softer words. So what do you expect of this young man who was brought up in the house of Rasulullah? Because from the previous episode, we knew that Sayyidina Zayd was an adopted son of Rasulullah. Then he was called after his father, but he remained living close to Rasulullah, and Ayman, she was with Rasulullah and remained close to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And Osama bin Zayd was most of the time in the house of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So he was brought up by Rasulullah. He was born in the year 7 before Hijrah, and Rasulullah migrated after 13 years. In the year 3 after Hijrah, when the Battle of Uhud took place, Sayyidina Osama radiallahu anhu at that time was 10 to 11 years old, came with his friends to Rasulullah. He wanted to fight with them. And before I continue with the story of Sayyidina Osama radiallahu anhu, I just would like to drag our attention to the issue of battles in the time of Rasulullah, because now many people accuse Islam of war, and sometimes we make mistakes when we want to portray the life of Rasulullah, especially in movies. We just show the battles, and the message that we receive is that Islam battle after battle after battle after battle. It is not like that. In the Battle of Badr, it is the first battle. It took place near the Medina, and the Meccans came all the way from Mecca to Medina, some 400 kilometers. So they fought Rasulullah. They lost the battle, the Meccans. They take an oath to take revenge in the second year, and where they came again all the way from Mecca, near the Medina, to the mountain of Uhud. And mountain of Uhud, very close to Medina. Now it's one part of it, wallahu alam. So they came again. In the Battle of Al-Khandaq, again they came. So Rasulullah did not go and fight them. We just want to understand that Islam is not the religion that asks us go and fight and kill. It is not like that. Just to understand. So when the Battle of Uhud took place, Rasulullah was preparing his companions, because Meccans take an oath that they come next year to revenge the loss in Badr. So should Rasulullah just remain sitting at home, he will prepare himself. Otherwise they come and attack them in Medina and finish them. So Rasulullah was preparing his companions to go and fight. They need fighters. Sayyidina Osama with his friends came to him. But Rasulullah ﷺ returned them back because they were very young. So Rasulullah, even though he needed fighters, but he didn't, take advantage of children, those who are willing to go with him. No. Even though they can be at the back, carrying water, filling water, preparing, helping, not fighting, but Rasulullah did not use them. They are children. When Rasulullah denied them the chance, Osama went back and his eyes filled with his tears. Why he was crying? Because he was deprived to go to the battle. He was not crying because he was deprived a video game. He was denied a candy. He was denied a biscuit. No. He was crying because he was deprived to be with Rasulullah. How Rasulullah ﷺ go to that battle and endanger himself, and I stay at home safe. This is the love of Rasulullah in the heart of a 10 or 11 years old boy. Are we teaching our children the love of Rasulullah to that extent? Do the parents who are supposed to teach children the love of Allah love Allah and love Rasulullah? We have a big problem nowadays. Rasulullah is not almost merely, not in our life, merely in our hearts. And most of our love to Allah and to Rasulullah is only by the tongue. Sayyidina Osama radiallahu anh went back crying because he did not get that chance. Nowadays, 10 or 11 or even 15 years old, if we deny them like a game, they cry. What do you expect the future of this ummah, that their children cry for trivial things, that their children don't have the love of Allah and Rasulullah deep in their heart, that the children know nothing about the life of Rasulullah, that the children are not attached to Rasulullah, that the children, they know Rasulullah only by the name. If you ask them what is the name of his father, of his grandfather, of his mother, maybe they don't know. How long did he live? They don't know. Let alone that the great teachings that Rasulullah taught us. Those children, after years, they will be the leaders of the ummah. What do you expect of such ummah to be? Those children, Sayyidina Osama radiallahu anh, he was brought up by Rasulullah. He was taught responsibilities, but he was taught responsibilities with love, not with cruelty and harshness. And we will see what is the production of Osama. That's why the next generation after Rasulullah led the whole world. That is the tarbiyah and the nurture and how Rasulullah brought up the children. Are we bringing up our children the same way Rasulullah did? Do we know how Rasulullah brought up children so we bring our children in the same way? We have a big problem nowadays. When our children know nothing except the virtual life using the handphone or the joysticks, and when they grow older, 18 or 20, and we ask them to be responsible and we ask them, why are you behaving like immature babies? Because we didn't teach them to shoulder responsibilities. It is our mistake. And what do you expect of such generation? That's why you see now I see many people who reach the age of 30 and their main intention is, what is the game that I play? What is, where is the place that I will spend with my friend? Having jokes and funning and sometimes smoking and this and that. But we don't think about when is the time that I want to know more about Rasulullah. I want to love Rasulullah. I want to be with Rasulullah. Unfortunately, very few people who think about that. And I have some numbers here, some statistics. Some of them are old, like 2011. There is 135 million people who play games only in US. This is 10 years ago. But now in 2020, the revenue of video games only in China, 27 billion 588 million. In 2020, only the revenue of video games. In the second place comes the United States, 19 billion 412 million. For example, we take a Muslim country like Malaysia. It takes the 31st place in the revenue of 2020, 261 million, and all the numbers are in USD. Spent on video games, let alone the time that we are killing and all the money. If we use them to raise our children on good, our children will be true leaders of the future. Anyway, unfortunately, this is a bitter reality. How we are bringing our children up and how Rasulullah ﷺ did. And this is, I repeatedly mentioned, this is the aim of this series. We want to compare the life of the companions, why they were the best ummah, the best people produced to humanity, and why we are not. This is one of the reasons. So Sayyidina Osama, in the Battle of Badr, he was deprived the opportunity, went back, and his eyes were filled with tears. Now, in the Battle of Al-Khandaq, that happened 2 years after, he was like 12 or 13 years old, he came to Rasulullah again. Ya Rasulullah, I want to be with you. He was in the line of the Muslims who came to defend. And the Battle of Al-Khandaq, you know, Rasulullah dug a trench and there was no fight. The trench was big and long and deep. Rasulullah, to prevent death, to prevent killing the Muslims and the non-Muslims, because Rasulullah was planning those non-Muslims who came to kill him now to bring them and to make them Muslims, to guide them to Jannah, to Allah. They came to fight Allah, to fight Rasulullah and the Muslims, to kill them, but Rasulullah was planning, how come I take them to Jannah? This is the love and the mercy of Rasulullah. And we should follow Rasulullah. Our love and mercy to non-Muslims should be like this. So, the love of Rasulullah to them, they came to kill him. He dug a trench, he dug a trench to save Muslims and non-Muslims alike. But the priority, of course, it was to Muslims. Sayyidina Osama was in the line of those people who want to defend. And he was tiptoeing. He was, stepping on the tip of his toes to make himself longer, like 10 centimeters more, to show Rasulullah that, Ya Rasulullah, you know, I am long now, I am a man, I want to be with you. 12 or 13 years. The love of Rasulullah deep in him. How come Rasulullah endanger his life, risk his life, and I stay safe? Do we have this kind of feeling, this love to Rasulullah? So once Rasulullah saw him that, and there will be most likely no fight, so Rasulullah pitied him and allowed him to be with him. 2 years after, or 3 years after, when he was 15 or 16, he joined Rasulullah in the Battle of Hunayn. And at the beginning of Battle of Hunayn, as you know, Muslims lost, but then Allah granted them victory. So when Muslims lost and ran away, only those who remained in the battle, Rasulullah, and very few, small number among the companions defending Rasulullah. But the majority, the rest, all of them ran away. One of those who was in front of Rasulullah defending him was Sayyidina Osama. He was, sacrificing all his life. Everything he has, the most precious thing that he has is his soul for the sake of Rasulullah. That is the love of Rasulullah in the heart of Sayyidina Osama radiallahu anhu. So he remained with Rasulullah in the Battle of Hunayn until Allah grant them victory. And then in the same year, in the Battle of Mu'tah, if you remember the last episode, when his father was martyred, radiallahu anhu, Sayyidina Zayd, he was fighting under the command of his father. So in that battle, his father was martyred. He left his father in the battle yard and buried him there, and he went back to Rasulullah ﷺ to Medina. And he lost his father. Alhamdulillah, not a problem. That is for the sake of Allah. He was almost 15. So you see that the personality of the 15 years old. Now, what we think of we still call them children. This is one of the beginning of the mistake. Don't call them children. Call them, you are a young man now. You should shoulder responsibility. If we still consider them children, we don't teach them responsibility. What do we expect out of them? All their life, they will be depending on you. Most of the people who fail in their life and they don't know how to be successful, the problem was their father or their parents, not only the father, or their teachers, because they didn't teach them how to shoulder responsibility, how to be true people who live a good life. They didn't teach them. And after that, they question them, why you are not successful in your life? You didn't teach him when you are supposed to do. And do you expect that this kind of person will teach his generation, the next generation, his children? There is a big problem in that case. But in the year 11 of Hijrah, when Rasulullah ﷺ, was almost departing this life, few days before the departure of Rasulullah, at the end of his life, Rasulullah ﷺ appointed Sayyidina Osama, make him a commander of an army, to go to the same place where his father was martyred. And he was 17 to 18 years old. And in his army, there was Sayyidina Abu Bakr and Umar and the great companions. He was the commander. The early Muslims, the great Muslims, he was the leader and they were under his command. And why Rasulullah ﷺ sent that army of Osama to the same place? Because we mentioned in the previous episode that when Rasulullah sent Sayyidina Zayd and appointed Zayd bin Haritha, Abdullah bin Rawaha, and the three companions to, number one, Zayd bin Haritha, number two is Ja'far bin Abi Talib, number three, Abdullah bin Rawaha. And if Rasulullah said, if they martyred, then choose one among you. Rasulullah sent them because prior to that, Rasulullah sent an envoy, a man carrying a message to go to Syria, to Busra. But the king in Jordan, before he reached Syria, stopped him and took the message from him and killed him. So that man was not going to him, just passing by him. Why you stop him and kill him? He killed him to send a strong message to Rasulullah. Even we will not allow your envoy, anyone to go. We don't want your message. So sending a strong message. If you don't want to allow him, stop him. Burn or cut the message, send him back. But why you kill him? He is not even coming to you. So Rasulullah sent Sayyidina Zayd, and now the Romans came 100,000 with Sayyidina Zayd. The Muslims were 3,000, 100,000 they came. Even Sayyidina Zayd was not sent to the Romans, so the Romans now came and interfered. And Muslims were not able to win that battle, and then they gathered themselves and went back to Medina. And they thought that, now we extinguish them, Islam will not come to us, they fear us. But the message of Allah has to be spread. Rasulullah ﷺ sent Osama not to fight, this will not be a battle, but send him to teach them a lesson and give them a message that we are here, don't think that Islam will not come. We will come to free the people that you enslave, because the kings at that time and the emperor were enslaving human beings. So that a message that Rasulullah wanted to send, don't think that we are not coming to you. We will come to you. And we come to free the people that you enslave. And even you have 100,000, we don't fear you. This is the message that Rasulullah wanted to send. So Rasulullah gave instruction to Osama. Do this, do that. Don't go and fight. Move during the night and stop during the day. Don't let anyone know about you. And don't, wait. Just, hit and come back. Teach a lesson and come back. So This is what happened. But Rasulullah ﷺ, when he gave him the instruction and the people started to prepare themselves for the move to march, Rasulullah ﷺ fell ill. And Rasulullah ﷺ was increasingly ill. The illness was increasing. And Sayyidina Osama had delayed a little bit to see what will happen. And one day he went to Rasulullah, and Rasulullah raised his hand and put them on Osama. Raised his hand and put them on Osama. So Sayyidina Osama radiallahu anhu said, I knew that he was making dua for me. But Rasulullah was unable to speak. So they waited. The army didn't move, didn't march until Rasulullah ﷺ departed this dunya. And when Rasulullah departed, of course, you know the story, what happened, and then the burial ceremony. So Sayyidina Osama delayed, and the Caliph becomes Sayyidina Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu. So some of the Muslims felt that it is better to change Osama for few reasons. Number one, only Mecca, Medina, and At-Ta'if remain Muslims. But all Muslims in the outskirts, all of them denounce Islam. And it became a very internal big problem. Number one priority is bring back people to Islam. And this is one reason. Let us finish this and then we send Osama. Another people, Sayyidina Abu Bakr, the Caliph, refused. Another reason is that Osama is still very young, 17 or 18, and we have people like 30, 40, 50 who experience war more than him. Sayyidina Khalid bin Walid radiallahu anhu. And they convinced even Sayyidina Umar that speak to Abu Bakr to change Osama, to choose another leader. Sayyidina Umar was convinced and came to Sayyidina Abu Bakr and told him the idea. Sayyidina Abu Bakr was sitting. When he heard that from Sayyidina Umar, he jumped angrily and said to Sayyidina Umar, woe to you! You want me to depose a leader that Rasulullah appointed? How come you say that? When Rasulullah appoints someone, Rasulullah appoints based on revelation from Allah, based on wahi, not based on himself. When Rasulullah appointed Osama, not because he loved him, because he is qualified to be, and based on revelation from Allah. So the real planner who is doing the plan is Allah, and it comes to us through Rasulullah. Do you think that me, Abu Bakr, I know more than Allah? Allah knew before Rasulullah passes away that Rasulullah will pass away. Rasulullah knew that those Muslims other than Mecca, Medina, and At-Ta'if, they will denounce Islam. Allah knew all that. And He gave us, that plan to send Osama. Do you want me now to depose him? Do you think that I know better? Sayyidina Umar, of course, knew that that opinion was wrong and went back to them and said, let's march, move. And Sayyidina Abu Bakr went with them, and he was walking next to Osama. Osama mounting a horse, and Sayyidina Abu Bakr walking on his legs. So Sayyidina Osama said to him, you either mount or I will dismount. You are walking on your feet and I'm on a horse. It is very impolite of me to do so. Then Sayyidina Abu Bakr said, you will not dismount, neither I will mount. You are marching away for the sake of Allah. I want to walk 1 hour with you for the sake of Allah. I want to dust my legs for the sake of Allah for 1 hour. And then before the departure, Sayyidina Abu Bakr, you see the politeness of the companions of Rasulullah. That's why he is Abu Bakr. He asked the permission of Osama. Rasulullah appointed Osama a commander of Umar and other companions. So Sayyidina Abu Bakr becomes the caliph now. He asked Sayyidina Osama, will you allow me to keep Umar with me to help me? That because Umar now, Sayyidina Umar under the command of Osama. Rasulullah appointed him, we just obey. Sayyidina Abu Bakr asked him, so Sayyidina Osama said yes. Sayyidina Umar went back with Sayyidina Abu Bakr and they marched. And they said, there was no successful expedition in the Muslim history like it was the expedition of Osama. He attained all the objectives that it was set for, and even Allah granted them more. Osama went there, attained, and did what Rasulullah told him and came back. And this is how the children who are brought up by Rasulullah, this is their production. So when our children are not productive because of us, we are not bringing them up in the right way. So if we want to bring a generation like the generation of Rasulullah, we need to bring them up in the same way that Rasulullah ﷺ did. Sayyidina Osama radiallahu anhu lived longer, and at the time of Sayyidina Umar was the caliph and gave him allowance 4,000. But his son, the son of Sayyidina Umar, Abdullah bin Umar, who was the same age of Sayyidina Osama, Sayyidina Umar gave him 3,000, not 4. And Sayyidina Abdullah asked his father, why you give Osama 4,000 and you give me 3? I am the same age of him. His father is not better than you. You are my father. And Osama is not better than me. But Sayyidina Umar said, no, you are not right. Rasulullah loved his father more than he loves me, and loved him more than he loves you. That's why I gave him 4,000. And Sayyidina Abdullah bin Umar was satisfied for that answer. And Sayyidina Umar bin Khattab radiallahu anhu, whenever he meets Osama, though Osama was the age of his son, whenever he meets him, he say, Assalamu alayka ya amiri, Assalamu alaykum my commander. And when people are, astonished, you are the caliph and he's very young and with black skin, and how come you tell him commander? He says, Rasulullah appointed him to be my commander. And this is how Sayyidina Umar radiallahu anhu thinks. He didn't think that he is younger than me, African origin, black skin. Had he thought like that, he would have not been Umar ibn Khattab that we know. He got the high level of being Umar ibn Khattab. If there was a prophet to be after me, it would have been Umar. He got that high level because of this personality, of this iman, this respect, this love to the people that Rasulullah loves. Sallallahu alayhi wasallam. With that, we come to the end of the story today. But the question that we should ask ourselves, are we bringing our children the same way that Rasulullah was bringing? Are we bringing our children and teaching them that there is no racism in Islam, color never matters? Do we make them familiar with the life of Rasulullah? Do we familiarize them with the life of Rasulullah? Do we know the life of Rasulullah? Do we love Rasulullah to teach them that love? If we don't have the love of Rasulullah in our hearts, not by the tongue. The tongue is a claim, no more than a mere claim. Reality is always in the hearts, and actions speak louder than words. Do we have the love of Rasulullah to teach this love to our children? Can I give you money if I don't have? Can I give you a pen if I don't have? Can I teach you a language if I don't have? Can I teach you Iman and the love of Rasulullah if I don't have it? So, unfortunately, we are in a big trouble. That's why our ummah now is not the best ummah. We are not living the way that Rasulullah wanted us to live, the way that Rasulullah taught our children. We are not teaching our children. We are not bringing up our children in the same way that Rasulullah ﷺ did. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to guide us to Him and to make us realize the realities as they are, to teach us, to grant us knowledge from Him, so we will have that knowledge and we will teach it to our children and to the young generation, and we come back again to be the best ummah produced to humanity, and we teach the teachings of love, the teachings of Islam with love and with mercy, to spread happiness in this dunya and the happiness in the coming life. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم: من دعا إلى هدى كان له من الأجر مثل أجور من تبعه لا ينقص ذلك من أجورهم شيئا. رواه Muslim. Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessing be upon him, said, anyone who calls to guidance will have a reward equal to the reward of those who adhere to it, without their reward being diminished in any respect. Narrated by Muslim. If you think there is guidance in this video, share it and call others to it.